Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the NSF Gluten-Free and BRC Gluten-Free presentations. My name is Janel Abro, and I am one of the Business Development Managers for Consumer Values Verified. CVV is focused on label claim certification services such as gluten-free, non-GMO, raised without antibiotics, certified plant-based, and true source honey. I've been with NSF for the past 5 years with a previous role in beverage quality. Today, the U.S. gluten-free market has grown to an estimated $11.6 billion market and is expected to grow 11% each year. Helping to drive this growth are retailers requiring manufacturers to get third-party certification claims. With celiac disease being such a huge concern for our consumers, the diagram here shows us that consumers are willing to pay for a product that has a certified label claim. The primary aim of the NSF Gluten-Free program is to create clear production testing and evaluation criteria for the determination of foods or products to be considered gluten-free. This program is designed to certify products under our internal NSF Gluten-Free protocol. The NSF Gluten-Free certifies that a product's manufacturing process prevent the contamination or commingling with gluten-containing ingredients, and that finished goods test below a 15 parts per million threshold. The NSF Gluten-Free certification program aims to provide a solution for suppliers to demonstrate to the supply chain and consumers that are mindful of gluten-free concerns and are taking active measures to provide gluten-free ingredients to the marketplace. We require GMPs in place to prevent contamination during handling and processing. Our NSF gluten-free certification process includes an application portion, review, and certification. This is a document-based review, and there is rigorous investigation that is involved. There's also an on-site audit where NSF has internationally trained auditors. We do require specific documentations to be submitted before the audit, such as product labels, formulation statements, supplier ingredient statements, organic certificates, ingredient process flow charts, sampling and testing SOPs specific to high-risk ingredients as well. NSF Gluten-Free certification program follows all FDA regulations for labeling gluten. The process begins with a potential client sending required documents to me so that I can quote and contract for application submission. Once the quote is signed, the client information is added to the system and the client is introduced to their dedicated account manager for documentation submission. We complete the application review, which can take 1 to 2 weeks, and then we schedule the facility audit. This is determined on an auditor availability. So at the end of the facility audit, our auditors collect product samples to be tested and confirm that the finished product tests under the 15 parts per million. Our standard is quite stringent as US FDA requires finished products to test under 20 parts per million, and ours is 15. So then the audit report is created along with any nonconformances that are cited, and this report can take about 2 to 3 weeks. So then we ask the client to submit all corrective actions, and obviously the timing of this is dependent on the client. Once all the corrective actions have been completed, the certification is then granted. The certification decision can take about 1 to 2 weeks as well. We estimate the NSF gluten-free certification process can take a total of 14 to 20 weeks. This is really dependent on the readiness of the client, the facility level, the testing protocol, and even response time to any of our corrective actions. The main components of the program include product integrity, good manufacturing practices, and finished product testing. Companies must have in place policies and procedures for the handling and storage of incoming raw ingredients. Each ingredient, including packaging materials, must be confirmed to be less than 20 parts per million upon receipt at the facility. Under the GMP requirements, the storage and handling procedures, cleaning and sanitation methods, and procedures must be used to prevent the commingling and cross-contamination, with training procedures in place to ensure protocols are utilized efficiently. All the documentation must be maintained for 5 years. There's also a requirement for finished product testing. This is an internal testing policy at the facility that at a minimum tests the first sellable unit of each lot of product. This is to confirm that less than 15 parts per million. So I'll get into a little bit more detail on those requirements in the next coming slides. An annual on-site audit is required. Our auditors come to the facility to ensure what has been submitted on paper is actually occurring at the facility level. The products must be running on the day of the audit, and our NSF auditor will pull a sample from each family of products and send to the NSF lab for testing to confirm the 15 parts per million threshold. The auditor does not make the audit decision. Rather, they just note the observations that they cite at the facility, and the NSF Gluten-Free Technical Review Team issues any nonconformances. At the facility level, the facility can have parallel processing as long as there's segregation and no commingling or cross-contamination of products. NSF Gluten-Free certifies that a product's manufacturing processes prevent the contamination or commingling with gluten-containing ingredients. Gluten-free product integrity must be ensured by the specific methods. The documentation to confirm gluten-free integrity of all ingredients or final product sourced, commingling and cross-contamination prevention of ingredients and finished products from receiving, packaging, storage, and final distribution, commingling and or cross-contamination prevention of packaging materials and storage containers, and methods for evaluating cross-contact were identified. Documentation regarding the installation of procedures to prevent the introduction of gluten into the manufacturing process. Documentation to confirm ingredients used in the production of gluten-free products must be submitted to confirm gluten levels do not exceed the 20 parts per million threshold. Any inherently gluten-free products are exempt from this requirement, such as raw fruits and vegetables that have not been processed. NSF considers the following ingredients as high risk due to their potential for cross-contamination with gluten-containing ingredients during harvesting and the manufacturing process. Raw oats and cereal grasses such as barley grass or wheatgrass are examples of this. If a certified entity seeks to use a high-risk ingredient in an NSF gluten-free certified product, the supplier of the high-risk ingredient or the certified entity must complete gluten-free testing on each lot of the incoming high-risk ingredient prior to processing. The gluten test will be acceptable as long as the results are no more than 20 parts per million. There are currently not any scientifically reliable and validated testing methods to test for the presence of gluten in fermented and hydrolyzed ingredients, or for finished products made from wheat, barley, rye, or hybrids of these grains. To certify a finished product that contains one of these ingredients, the certified entity must demonstrate that the ingredient supplier has complied with the requirements in Section 4.6.2, these are listed on this slide as well, and complete the NSF gluten-free compliance affidavit. Any additional documentation may be requested at the discretion of NSF. An internal testing plan must be in place at a facility to test the first sellable unit of each production line per lot. The finished products are compliant if the gluten is no more than 15 parts per million. Acceptable gluten testing kits for performing internal gluten testing should be AOAC validated, and some of the tests are listed here as well. If the selected product is found to have a gluten level between 15 parts per million and 20 parts per million, the certified entity may choose to test additional samples from the same lot, not to exceed a total of 10 samples, and then take the average, and dependent upon the approval by NSF per the certified entity's corrective action plan. If the average gluten level is no more than 15 parts per million, the selected lot would be considered to be in compliance. Now, if after testing the additional samples, the average gluten level is still between 15 and 20, the certified entity must notify NSF of the failure within 48 hours of receiving the test results, and all the finished products from the production run will be placed on hold and remain in control of the certified entity until they're released in writing by NSF. Just as a side note, the FDA definition of gluten-free is less than 20 parts per million. So given the globalization of the food supply chain and 15 parts per million gluten-free limits set by any other country, it's possible for a certified entity to source gluten-free ingredients and through no fault of their own, produce a test result that exceeds 15 parts per million, but is less than 20 parts per million. So in such an instance, a root cause analysis must be conducted to clearly indicate the source of the elevated levels of gluten and continue to closely monitor the compliance of those ingredients. So this process has to be captured in the gluten-free compliance plan. If the selected product is found to have a gluten level greater than 20 parts per million, the entire lot is to be found non-compliant. So the certified entity must notify NSF of the failure within 48 hours, and all finished products from the production run would be placed on hold and remain in control of the certified entity until they're released in writing by NSF. For the facility audits, they can actually last anywhere from a few hours to a full day, and if you choose to do multiple certifications for your product, there's an opportunity to bundle your audits if time allows. The audits are completed on an annual basis, and our auditors are trained internationally. The audits can be bundled with an additional NSF service, including CVV programs, the dietary supplements portfolio on consecutive days, and can be bundled with NSF food safety audits. Specific to SQF audits, we ensure it is a year for an announced audit, and if not, it allows for a one-time visit of NSF to the facility in subsequent years. We offer a preferred pricing discount of 25%, and the duration of a bundled audit is typically an additional half day. These are the logos that can appear on your client's packaging after certification. The NSF gluten-free logo can be used for products sold internationally in accordance with the local regulations. The logos cannot be altered. We currently have a number of certified clients in the US, Canada, and Latin America, and are working with retailers in Canada to be endorsed, as some retailers do prefer that. This slide here shows a comparison table for all gluten-free certifications that are out there. NSF offers the two that are highlighted in blue, the NSF Gluten-Free and the BRC Gluten-Free. So starting with NSF Gluten-Free, the first column, the second column is GFCO or GIG. They actually recently just sent out a statement with the new logo. So the one on the left you see with the GF and the circle around it was their original logo. The one on the right is the new logo. The third column is the BRC Gluten-Free, and the fourth is GFFP. NSF Gluten-Free has a stricter parts per million for the finished product than the BRC. So if you look, we've got a 15 parts per million or less for finished product for NSF Gluten-Free, and then BRC allows for 20 parts per million or less. The NSF Gluten-Free can be bundled with any CVV, NSF food safety, and dietary supplement services with an additional half-day audit. And clients that are already SQF or in the process of obtaining SQF certification can bundle with NSF Gluten-Free. Thank you for listening in. This concludes my presentation.